Hello everybody, welcome to our Enterprise Hub event this evening. It is part of our Writers Bloc, which is our writing centre online. And for those who don't know very much about the Enterprise Hub, it is a project that offers 12 hours of free business startup advice for people living in the Liverpool City region. It's funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and it's an absolutely amazing project that we're thrilled to be a part of at Writing on the Wall. We are the only creative partner in the project, and we'll be able to offer you consultation regarding your idea or your new business, and then refer you on to the appropriate business support. It's an amazing project, so let's find out a little bit more about it tonight. I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by our writer on the block, Kevin Dyer, and we'll be having a conversation about living as an artist. But first, a little bit about Kevin, if you haven't been introduced to him yet. He is a multi-form writer of drama, different length prose, page and performance poetry, but he makes his living from being a playwright. He is a winner of many awards, including the winner of the Writers Guild of Great Britain Play for Children and Young People. He writes plays for children and young people and adults as well, and he's interested in visual theatre and well-crafted plays. He frequently works as a dramaturg, which we'll be getting into a little bit later about what that actually is. And Kevin is also an associate writer for the Action Transport Theatre, and he's currently commissioned to write 4 plays and is one of the leaders of Storm in the North Theatre. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Lovely. How are you today?
I'm good. I've been in rehearsals in Liverpool today, in live rehearsals with live actors. So,
wow, that would be incredible to get back into that again.
Yeah. I've been wearing a mask. I've been working as a director today, director and writer combined.
Okay.
So I've had my mask on all day.
Oh, amazing. So both hats on and your mask on. Brilliant. So today what we're going to talk about is living and making a living as an artist. And straight away, I kind of want to talk about the fact that we need to demystify that idea, because I think there is a lot of confusion and, mystery around what is an artist and how on earth do you make some money from that, and how do you make it, your life's work, which is what you've done yourself. So you're a perfect person to ask. And I wanted to start really with asking you about your own journey and looking at your successes and why they have happened, why that's been successful for you, and then the challenges as well.
Okay, can I go to the word artist first of all?
Yeah.
I don't usually call myself an artist. I've got a feeling it's a bit of an overused term. And I think most of the time, whether I work as a director or a writer, my job is quite technical and quite practical. I think Picasso was an artist. I don't even know whether George Orwell was an artist. I don't know whether he was. I know he was a fantastic writer. And Mallory Blackman, is she an artist? She's a fantastic prose writer and dramatic writer. So I'm a bit unsure about this use of the word artist, because it takes us a little bit away from the real world. It carries a lot of sort of other baggage. Maybe I just haven't owned the word yet. Maybe that's what it is.
No, I definitely agree. I think maybe we can use the term writer in this case then. So making a living as a writer is something we can delve into.
Okay. Go and ask the first part of your question again for me. I'm tired rehearsal room brain here.
No problem at all. So in terms of like that as a whole, we've just heard about a lot of things that you've achieved during your career as doing that, writing for a living. So could you talk about some of the successes you've had and why you think that's happened?
Okay, I'm going to get to your question in a minute. I'm going to look at one other word. Okay.
Perfect.
The other word you used is career, and I'm still not sure whether it's a career. Career seems to talk about progression, doesn't it? And you're allowed to apply for the next job up. I I don't know whether many people who work in the arts do that. I think you might if you run an organization, or if you work in marketing in an organization, you might see a career path. But oddly enough, I think most of us writers, we don't, you know, because it's a bit of an up and down roller coastery sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But just tell you where I started off. I thought I was going to be a writer when I was about 16, 17, but I thought I was going to write for newspapers because I didn't know that any other sort of writing existed. I didn't really read books. I'd never been to the theatre. I couldn't write poetry because I was a working class kid from a council estate, so I would have been lynched if I wrote poetry. So I thought I can use this writing to work in newspapers. And I did do that, and I did work in newspapers, and I did work in magazines as well. I worked on Jackie, which some people here might know, which was fantastic in that that's where I got my attention to detail, because DC Thomson are really interested in proofreading and how to make a document look good. But I also got my interest in politics there. I think that's when I learned what politics were, because DC Thomson was a non-unionist organization, non-union, and they paid different rates of pay to men and women, and they asked people to keep their pay secret.
Yeah,
and they're quite old-fashioned. So that's when I learned politics, which has sort of stayed with me later on.
Yeah.
So that's what I started with, wanting to be a writer. But then I went and worked as an actor. And I also, I didn't go to writing school. I didn't go to the University of East Anglia or anywhere posh like that. I did a directing course, a practical directing course. So I've never ever trained as a writer. Never.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, when you went for that job with the magazine and the newspaper, did you go in with any experience? Did you have to build your portfolio, or did you just apply for the role?
I just applied for the job to be an editorial assistant. That's how I started. And then I was on this magazine, and we were proofing and we were commissioning, and sometimes I'd write a little bit of stuff. And then I worked on newspapers, and it was at the time of the birth of free newspapers. So no proper journalist would ever want to go and work on a free newspaper. But I was just a kid out of college, really. So I applied, and I had a nice chat with the woman who owned the newspaper, and we got on well. She gave me the job, and I was paid, I think it was 6p a word. That's what I was paid.
Wow, yeah.
And it actually turned out to be really, really profitable when they pay you by the word.
Yeah.
Not very good. Not very good for your writing style, because you just make everything as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then it was after then I became an actor, and I worked in theatre companies where we devised their own work. And that's where I thought, oh, actually, somebody's got to write this, because these devised plays are terrible.
Yeah.
So I started writing and starting becoming a writer. But I didn't call myself a writer for many, many years after that.
Yeah, I think that's always quite a big step. I work with a lot of emerging writers on many of the courses that Writing on the Wall runs. And that kind of, sometimes people can feel very confident, but just even saying it, I am a writer, and giving themselves the permission to do that, and to carve time out of their day to say, this is where I'm going to do my practice, can seem like a huge step, I think, at the beginning, or even when you're a couple of years down the line.
I agree. It's like calling yourself a poet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you do, for some reason, it makes you feel very vulnerable, I think, when you do that. So brilliant. So that's in terms of your successes there. I listed a couple of the awards that you've won. Would you rate the awards as a success, or is there other parts of your practice and your writing that you've seen as more successful?
I was in the rehearsal room this afternoon, and we sorted out the first scene, how the first scene should work. We had some text which was like that, and it wasn't working, and we just switched it around like that. And it's fantastic because it's unlocked the play. That's the biggest success that's in my head at the moment, that we swap those 4 lines around and suddenly the play works.
Yeah.
But, you know, getting awards and things, we do need people sometimes to tell us that we can do it. I think, you know, my mum and dad, to be honest, weren't very good at, they were fantastically supportive, but they didn't quite understand the arts or writing, so they didn't quite know what to say. So it is nice when someone says, oh, you can do this, can't you? You can do this. And that, because you need you need self-belief to be able to take the risks to write something unusual. You need to have the self-belief so you can send a play to the royal court and say, hey, read this.
Yeah.
You need that.
Yeah, and I guess that, of course, in a practical sense, when you've won an award, it often leads to more work with other people as well.
I've never known it, let me tell you that. I've never won anything, and the next day nobody has ever phoned and said, hey Kev, do you want to write me a play? It's never happened.
Okay, that's really that's a good myth buster there for us straight away.
I'm going to carry on putting the credits on the bottom of my signature on my emails, but I think that's just for my own vainglory. It's not, I don't know whether there's any practicality to it.
Yeah, it gives you a boost. Brilliant. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the challenges then. So as a way into the practice and to being a writer, were there any challenges and anything that you think other people might be experiencing themselves, and how did you overcome them?
Well, what we all want as writers, isn't it? We want somebody to put our plays on. That's what we want. And the biggest challenge is there are more playwrights and plays than there are theatre companies to do them. That's the challenge. Yeah. You know, here we are the day after the budget. In economic terms, there's more supply than there is demand. Well, I think there is a demand for all our ideas, but we don't have the resources to put them all on. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a position you can easily get into as a writer. I've got this play, I've got this other play, I've got this collection of poems. What do I do with them? What do I do with them? And I think that's what millions of creative people in Britain feel like, because I think there are millions and millions of creative people, and they don't quite know what to do with their creativity. And some people can make things at home, and they make beautiful homes, or they make fantastic gardens. Some people knit, and some people make crafts. Some of us make these things called plays, which is just a pile of scribble on a piece of paper. We're desperate for somebody to do something with it. That's the challenge, finding the person to do your play.
So for you, when you were taking those first steps, how did you do that?
It was easy for me to begin with because I worked in a theatre company and I was in a devising team as an actor, and I knew the play was going on in 3 weeks. So I knew it was going to go on. So I built up, if you like, a CV. I was able to say, I've written this play for so-and-so and it's gone on. I've written this play for so-and-so and it's gone on. But I sort of sneaked in the back door, didn't I? They didn't employ me as a writer. They just got me as a writer, whether they wanted it or not.
Proximity.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's brilliant. I mean, if we kind of refine that, that's making sure that you're building your network and getting involved and doing the work and getting yourself out there, isn't it? You know, like you said, the greatest goal is to get it seen by somebody, and it's not going to be seen if you're worried over it and editing it for the 18th millionth time at home. You've got to share it. You've got to make those networks.
I have to say, I am the world's worst networker. I am the world's worst. I have never, ever, ever been to a party to meet somebody. That isn't my way. I can write emails and send people work quite often. It's like, I think a play often is a calling card. It's never going to go on, but it's a calling card for somebody else. It's a calling card for them to say, oh, I might think of Ronnie when I've got my next project. So they're a useful calling card.
Yeah, I think, and in terms of like networking, I think I mean more around like getting involved in your local theatre, going to I mean, at the Everyman in Liverpool, I know that they have a writer's room there that you can hire a desk there. And you're going to be around other people who are also writing or also interested in that. And the more people that you connect with, the more opportunities you open yourself up to.
And the other great reason for meeting other writers is you just feel a bit less lonely.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But you've got to be careful, because if mixing with writers who are really successful can make you just to feel a bit depressed. You have to mix with nice writers.
Yeah.
People who are willing to be generous and talk about creative things, and maybe read your play and maybe say to you, should we do a little reading of your play in my living room? Those are the sort of people that are useful to connect with, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that in the writing courses that we run, it's something that we really work towards, because we have like a group methodology when we're looking at writing development, and that the group supports each other, and they bring different life experiences and different things and strengths to the group. And there is somebody who teaches on our courses, Sarah McLennan, and she always quotes that comparison is the thief of joy. So Absolutely. That even though we're in this room together as writers and we're supporting each other, you're on your own writing journey and you can't compare yourself to someone else.
And it's really important to look at other people's work about how they do it, because we can learn from their process and from their craft. To have those people around you where you can say, oh, that's how they start a play. That's useful. Oh, they're trying to connect their work with that theatre. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Those bits you can spare you on, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to get into that always awkward topic, but basically, how do you support yourself when you're writing, and how can you earn some money off it?
I have been very fortunate in that I have a house and I pay the mortgage, and I work not just as a writer, but I make sure that all my work is writing connected. I can do that. That's a choice I sort of made. Also, I live with somebody, and that's, oddly enough, that's quite handy, because if one of you doesn't have work, the other one might have. But I'm not suggesting everybody has to have a relationship with somebody just to finance. But I think the thing about money is the question really is, how do I survive as a writer? No, and that's not just the tapping of the keyboards. It's how do I get my mental health, and how do I get my bank balance around this being a writer thing? And you have to have strategies for that, I think. I knew a man called Nick Wood, who was a teacher who wanted to be a writer. So he saved up enough money for a year's salary. So he said, no, I've got this money. I've got my, whatever his teaching wage was. I'm now going to take 1 year off and see if I can make it as a writer. Because I think it's exhausting sometimes, isn't it? Having a full-time job and coming home and writing in the evenings or at the weekends. That's an exhausting thing. And people who do that, they have all my admiration.
It's often reality, isn't it, for a lot of writers?
It is.
It is. Yeah.
And it's hard to do that.
So, and how did that writing year go for him?
Great. He's now a professional writer, and he's big in Germany. That's the phrase. He writes young people's theatre, and many of his plays are published in Germany and put on in Germany, and they're on now. They're being performed in Germany today as I speak.
Amazing. Well, that's a great success story. So for you, can you tell us a little bit about your strategy? How do you make sure, because like you say, it is in some sense it is a job. How do you get the words on the page? What practice do you have? Okay.
So one thing I've tried to do is I try to embed myself in companies, because writing is, it's not particularly lonely. I'm quite a person. I quite like being on my own, but I find it really interesting to be connected with a company. So you just get to hear about all that stuff about equal opportunities and about employment procedure and you get to be with people who are talking about putting on plays. With a group of people who are talking about putting on plays. So I'm associate writer with Action Transport, and I'm artistic associate at Farnham Maltings. And again, it just means that at Farnham Maltings they have creative weeks where all the people that they're associates, we all just go away together, and they feed us, and we can just talk about making plays.
Wow.
And it's really great. So for me, that's one of my key strategies. And I used to be an associate at the Dukes as well. And it just means I'm part of that theatre world and I'm not so isolated. And that works professionally and personally. So that's what I do. But also I'm lucky that I get commissioned. So people ask me to write plays. And I think that's because I have some strong relationships with people who can commission writers, artistic directors, really. And we get on creatively.
Brilliant. So in terms of how you got your roles there as an associate writer, can you talk us through that? Was that, you built up a portfolio of work and then you applied to that job, or was that something like you had a connection there?
At Farnham and at the Dukes, I was invited to have that role because I'd already written plays for them. And I think lots of companies are looking to they are really looking to bring in creative people into the organisation. And I think so, particularly in Liverpool, there are theatres and organisations that they do want to connect with people outside their front door, and people who have good ideas and people who aren't difficult to work with, they will be called in or connected with. They will be connected with, because that's what theatre companies want to do. It's definitely what they want to do. So I try and turn the tables and I say, I don't need them, they need us. They can't do the theatre if they don't have our plays. They need our ideas. They need new ideas. So we just have to make ourselves known that we are the people with ideas. So sometimes I just send ideas to people. I don't send them a play because it takes too long to write a play, and then you find out somebody else has written it. So sometimes I pitch ideas quite a lot to people.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And again, it kind of leads me on to my other question, which is often if people are, because I realise that you are associated with a few different organisations there, and you've got quite a lot of different strings to your bow in terms of what you do for your practice. I think a lot of people ask me, what are the practical steps for this and how do I do it? And when we start with, well, you need to do your writing, you need to practice your writing, get your portfolio. Then I talk a little bit about the skills around it as well. So you might not think that you need to be an okay copywriter, but it helps to be able to sell yourself, to market yourself to different audiences. You do have to have a little bit of a knowledge of finance and how to organise that, and project, managing your own projects and things. So I think, what would you say are the skills you need as well?
I asked one of the freelance workers that I was with today, and I asked her, I said, so what are the key things about being a freelancer in the arts? It was great. She said, be organised, get your invoices in on time. And you go, oh yeah, it is about being a business. And my brother's a plumber, and all the time I think that he and we do the same sort of job, really. People phone us up, they want something fixed, we go there, we fix it, and we say goodbye. And I have to be the same as him. I have to turn up, and I've got to be efficient, and I've got to be polite, and I have to work out what they want. I have to work out what needs doing, and I have to do it. So going back to one thing you said before about how do I make my living, I don't just write plays. I do other things, but I try and keep them connected. So I teach or lead writing courses, and I also direct. So in the end, my head is always on theatre. I work really hard on that, and that's what I do. I try and to keep myself creative, to keep myself a theatre worker. I make sure I work in theatre. So I call myself a theatre maker, really. And that means I could design a piece for somebody, or I could direct a piece for somebody, or produce a piece. And if I just tried to write, I would probably go hungry.
So, and as you said, like the facilitating, does that kind of feed into your writing? And your writing obviously would facilitate you.
Every time you work on a play in any way, you learn more and you get better. That's what I think.
I think this is a good spot just to ask, can you give us your definition of a dramaturg, please? Because that is what I have in your wonderful introduction.
You can go to university now in the UK and do dramaturgy, and especially in Germany and Canada. My understanding is that the term came from Germany. And I think it's like a lot of theatrical terms or theatre industry terms, it varies. It really does vary. Just as a writer on one project is different to a writer on another.
Yeah,
it just is. It just is. Even if you don't change, you have to do a different job. But someone says to me that a writer is a dramaturg is a writer's best friend, and I that's not right. That just isn't right. But I think the job of the dramaturg is to help the writer. Well, no, let's start this again. Sometimes the dramaturg is employed by the writer, and sometimes the dramaturg is employed by the company. Like if it's a big company let's say we're in Strasbourg or something, and they're putting on 12, 15 plays a year, the artistic director or the freelance directors, they can't look after the playwright because they're too busy doing too many other things. So they bring somebody in to support and look after the playwright in the appropriate way, but to make sure when the script comes to the company, it is amazing. I think that's the job. Help the writer make sure when the script comes to the company, it is amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for clearing that up for us.
Well, that's me. That's what I say. But with sometimes if I do dramaturgy on someone's play, I might spend a day on it and charge them a little fee. Sometimes I'm asked to do dramaturgy on a play with a writer from the beginning of the process to when the play opens. So that might be 10 or 15 days work.
Mm. Okay, so it just really depends on the needs of the person and who's asking you to do it. Is it the company or is it the writer or the?
But some people here listening in now, they will do dramaturgy in that then a colleague or a friend will say, "Will you read my play?" And when you respond to them, there's some dramaturgy going on. It's that supporting the writer to make a better play. Yeah. That's me anyway. That's me.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's what I think.
So, if we just kind of follow on from talking about facilitating then and dramaturg as well, if we look at the practical ideas, a lot of the questions I get asked when people are looking into going freelance and they're starting their journey, so they're doing a lot of writing and they're building their portfolio. When is the moment that it's right to start charging for a facilitating service that you're doing? And in your experience, what is a good level to go in at?
You mean charging as a writer, you mean?
No, charging as a writer maybe, and charging as a facilitator. So some of the roles that you have, you're facilitating writing development. So for both of them?
Well, my brother, the plumber, he says this. He says, don't get your toolbox out of the van until you've agreed the contract. And that I think that's useful. And what it means is just sort out the arrangement with whoever you're working with. It's really, really important, especially if you're doing a project with your mates. That's when it's most important. Sort out what you're going to do, when it gets done, and what you get for it, which might be money, or it might be a part in the play, or it might be just sort out all those nuts and bolts things. And then you can start the project.
That's interesting, because I was just going to say quickly is that a lot of the time I find in the industry, in the arts industry, is that you're often asked to do a lot of work for a long time as a way to gain experience. Yes. And that kind of stepping into being paid, it seems like a huge leap. And like that's where the kind of blur is for a lot of people asking me that question.
And that's because we're used to being treated as free, as just not important.
Well, or you enjoy this, therefore.
That's right, absolutely.
You know, I'm doing you a favour, even though you're giving me your practice.
It's the same for circus artists and musicians as well. I work with a company in Canada, and over there, the man who runs the company, he just says, I will not ever ask a writer to write anything for me without paying them any money. So to be honest, that should happen for the theatre companies in Liverpool. They shouldn't ask people to do favours for them and write bits of plays which they put on either on the web or in the studio or anywhere without giving them some money.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're an Arts Council funded organisation. They shouldn't be then using human beings to make their work for nothing. They just shouldn't be doing it.
No.
But it's really hard if you're a writer, if, I won't mention the name of the theatre, if they come to you and say, oh, will you write a 3-minute piece for us? We will do it, won't we? And I do it. I write work for free for people. I do it. I do lots of things for free. But I think we have to try and do it on our terms.
Yeah.
Make sure you're doing it on your terms. But also, I think there is a point where people have to say, I'm not doing it for free anymore.
Yeah.
And I know actors who have done that, who've said, I'm not doing work for free anymore. You can ask me, but I'm going to tell you in your face, I don't do work for free anymore.
Yeah. And get used to having that conversation as well. Like if you're a freelancer, you're constantly negotiating that, aren't you?
Yeah, and you don't have to be aggressive about it, but you just have to make these people know, especially if they've got big cars and they've got lovely houses and they work for an Arts Council of England portfolio organisation, that they shouldn't be asking you to write it for nothing. Unless you get something really good back, if you get really good training. I think that, doing it for the contacts isn't enough, I don't think.
No. You've got to have an enriching experience back, haven't you?
Yeah.
So just quickly before we move on then, just because I want to know your opinion, do you think that the government should have more of a role in developing the arts and giving people that time and space and money to do that?
Do you want a short answer?
I'll have whatever answer you want to give, Kevin.
Well, I think the answer is yes. And I think that the government, we have an Arts Council. Let's remember that we do have an Arts Council. And we can talk about the flaws of the Arts Council for a long time. But, I've worked in places where they don't have Arts Councils, in North Africa or in Iran or something, where the government think that the arts are waging a soft war against the state. And in some ways, that's our job as writers and painters. We are going to wage a soft war against the state to make the world we live in better. That's part of our job, I think.
Yeah.
Not all the time. We don't always have to do that. We can also write poems about flowers. That's fine. But that's our job. And I think we do live in a country where the arts are supported by the government. That's just a fact, isn't it? Mm-hmm. There is then another conversation about whether there should be more, whether they should support individuals or whether they should support organizations. That's the next part of the question, I think.
Mm. And whether the current rate of compensation is accurate to the value that it gives society as well.
Absolutely. And because that it is hard to measure our contribution, isn't it?
Yes, but easier over the last year when it's become people's sole way to, enjoy being stuck indoors, and also for mental health as well.
Yes.
So very valuable.
And I've worked in organizations, particularly working with young people, where young people have said, this has saved my life. I've heard lots of young people say that. And that's not me being special. That's happening in arts with young people organizations all over the country. probably all over the world. It's probably happening in Soweto and Bangkok and everywhere, where the arts are keeping people alive and giving people a reason for living.
I totally agree, and I think that leads me on perfectly to my next question, which is writing and facilitating and making theatre in lockdown and online. And personally, I've had exactly the same experience as you. We've had an extraordinary year at Writing on the Wall, and you know, we could have stopped working, we could have gone on furlough, but you know, from the feedback we were getting from people that we were interacting with, that being creative and getting words on the page and being part of an online community like Writer's Bloc was so valuable to people. They did describe it as a lifeline that we knew we wanted to continue. And I think it's all, for me, I'm still sort of working out the impact myself on my own life or on other people's or on the work that we do. But I was just wondering if you had a kind of clear picture of the last year, you know, what has worked really well for you online? What have you actually enjoyed about it?
Well, when lockdown started, I had a play on the road, and it stopped like that. Mm. And I was in rehearsals writing and creating a play that was going into secondary schools, and it stopped like that. Mm. And I had 2 plays that were commissioned and ready that were going on to be produced, and both organizations just said, stop. So for some of those, I got some money, but for others, the money just stopped because I wasn't going to go to writing the next stages of the play. So I thought 2 things. Oh my God, I am going to run out of money. Yeah. And I also thought, oh, well, that's it. What do I do now?
Yeah.
Well, I've got nothing to do. And I always have work. I'm really lucky. I always have work. I'm a bit of a workaholic. And I tell you something, the garden became very tidy. But I think what I did was I started writing prose. I started writing more and more prose. I've got an interest in it, but I started writing short stories and sharing those around because it just really, really helped me here.
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of, I knew about mental health because I have one of my sons has had stuff going on in his life, but I never thought I had any. I know that's ridiculous, isn't it? We've all got mental health, but I just thought I can get over anything. Mm. All I have to do is go out and listen to the birds, and I will be happy. I know that. Mm. But it has not been straightforward, has it? This last year?
No, absolutely not. And
no.
I've had a similar experience to you, I think. And
but writing has helped. Writing really has helped.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I was going to ask as well is like the last conversation that you had with Mike in your introductory event, you talked a lot about you talked a little bit about theatre going online and how, you know, the fact of the matter, as you said, it was that it does lose something, and that there's movies that are doing those better, and that there's to do with the sound and the atmosphere. And, you know, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that in terms of, well, what do you think's next then for theatre? Is it just going to be an outdoor space? Is there going to be a pause and eventually we'll be back in business? What do you think is going to happen next?
The reason why I'm interested in theatre is its diversity, the multiplicity of stories, and how many different forms of theatre there are. That there's little studios, there's great big massive West End spaces, there's outdoor theatre, there's site-specific theatre, there's one-person plays, it just is so diverse. So, and I know that particularly over the last year, there's the enormous creativity of particularly small independent companies. Oddly enough, everyone's saying, when do we get theatre back in the buildings? When do we get theatre back in the buildings? And I want to say, actually, there are millions of small-scale theatre makers making their work now. It's all happening and all being planned, and some of it is happening. So we are unstoppable.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's the thing. You know, we are unstoppable.
Yeah, I think that's really encouraging to hear, isn't it? Because there might have been a short pause there, but like you said, it comes in so many forms that it might just not look exactly the same, but it's still there, still bubbling away. So in terms of not so much to do with just theatre then, but your other facilitation with your writing groups, have you found you've done them online? Has that worked well? Any successes from that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work on Zoom, a lot of writing groups on Zoom. And for some people, it works very well, particularly those people who live a long way away. Mm-hmm. Actually, I live in rural Wales, you see, so a theatre's a long way for me. All those people that live in rural areas, suddenly theatre practice is accessible.
Yeah.
It's like some people hate NT Live, but for those people who live a long way from the South Bank of London, it does, if they film them well, they suddenly, great theatre, albeit filmed, can spread out across the country, can't it, and across the world.
Yeah.
And so for some people, it's a good thing. I do work with some people that have, if you like, they just, well, two things. One, young people, they don't want to spend any more time on Zoom because there's so much schooling on Zoom. So this isn't a place for fun, to be honest. Yeah, this isn't where fun happened.
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting transition for us because we've always done live delivery and workshops in different community centres and with different organisations. Yeah. And there is a kind of magic in the room that we were very worried about when we moved online. And, you know, while I'm sure not everybody would agree with me, there is still an incredible energy in the room. And I don't know whether that's because you're doing something creative and people are so engaged and they're bringing so much to the sessions that you do come away and you feel like you've had a fantastic session with lots of people and connected and, you know, learned something. So that was kind of one of the biggest successes and surprises for me moving online. And I really didn't think it was possible, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. And there are two things, aren't there? One of there are sessions like this or workshops which are more interactive, and there are plays.
Yeah,
you know, they're really different. They're both about theatre or of theatre. But we can do this. We can do this talking. Okay.
Yeah, this works. Brilliant. So I've got a couple of questions from the audience. So if I move on to them, because it's already 1:45, let's have a look. So,
can I just say one thing about my career, if you like?
Yeah.
I'm just making it up. I was a freelance actor who couldn't say no to anything. Do you want to do this play? Yes, please. Do you want to be in Coronation Street? Yes, please. Do you want to do this commercial? Yes, please. And I find that a hard habit to break. I wish when I was younger I had a strategy. I would have made some different decisions.
Well, fantastic.
Just get a strategy, work all that stuff out about what you want and how you visualize where you want to be, what you want to look like, and make it and put in plans to make it happen. I never did that.
And just to plug there, if you want some help to do that, Enterprise Hub gives you free 12 hours of business advice, and we can help you with that. All the details for how to apply for that will be at the end of the programme and also in our comments section. So thank you so much to everybody who sent questions in. Let's have a look. How do we get assignments, commissions and publications? Mostly focus on improving the craft or more on networking to get your foot in? So I think there's two questions there. Is how do you get the assignments, commissions and publications? And then the second question is, do you need to focus on improving craft or do you need to focus more on networking and getting your foot in?
Craft. Make sure that the thing you write is just good. If you think about, let's say, a competition for a play, you know, most people won't even get the play ready in time. Most of those that go in will be rushed and finished at the last minute, so they probably won't be up to scratch. Most people, they won't be as good a writer as you, So you're already down to the last 10%. That's how to think of it. Then all you have to do is write the very, very best play you can. But the other beginning of the question was about, well, in the end, you have to do all these things. You've got to do networking. You've got to write great plays. You've got to be well organized. You've got to know, you've got to be able to find a way of finding where all the opportunities are. So you've got to be connected to all those websites, the Arts Council website and playwriting websites and all those things. You have to do it all. You can't just do one of them.
Sorry about that, everyone. You just got to be it all. Do it all.
You do.
Brilliant.
And to make most progress, you have to look at the one which you do least well, because that's the one that needs the most improvement. If you've got crap IT skills, just sort your IT out now.
Yeah, because it'll be the one you avoid. And I've experienced that in work. We cover a lot of different skills as a project manager in this role, and the ones that you don't really want to look at always end up at the end of the week.
If you think that you're weak on story, start doing some work on story. If you think that you really need a dramaturg, they would help you. Just get one. Just get it sorted. So identify what you need and attack it.
Fantastic. So we have another question that says, as a writer, do you prefer to work closely with a dramaturg, or at what stage of development? Oh, and at what stage of development, sorry.
I like to share the idea. Okay, yes, I like working with a dramaturg because I can't just do it all on my own. I need friends and people to read my work, and I share them about, and people read my work, and it's really, really valuable. And they're not always right, but everything they say always has value. So I do that from really early stage all the way through. Some of my poor friends, I feel so sad for them because I send them the same play 4 or 5 or 6 times. I owe them lots of chocolate and wine, I tell you.
Lots of free labour there, Kevin.
Yeah, well, it is. It's a lot of free labour. What I do is, my promise is, well, if you read my play, I'm going to read yours. Yeah. That's what I do. That's our deal, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we always talk about as well at Right to Work, is that, find some people, and sometimes on Right to Work courses, who you trust and who you value their opinion of your work. Brilliant. So the next question is, you mentioned your friend who quit his job and now writes children's theatre in Germany. Is there a general route to getting your writing performed in Germany or any country where you don't live?
Well, I wrote to a German publisher and I never got a reply. But to be honest, I probably didn't try hard enough, did I? I think in Germany, publishers are often a way in. What used to happen in Britain, in young people's theatre especially, well, and adult theatre, was that plays used to get redone quite a lot. It is fantastic now that so many new plays are produced. There are far more than there were 40, 50 years ago. Yeah. In those days, we just had George Bernard Shaw all the time, and Shakespeare, and maybe an adaptation of Agatha Christie. The theatre world is much more diverse now, the type of plays. But again, there's that big question: how do you get them on? In this country, some of our work gets published, but there isn't a great deal of value to it. We have to make make connections with theatres. But I think in Germany, for example, if you can contact those publishers, the publishers then work as a bit of a writer's agent. Okay. We haven't talked about writer's agents, have we, really?
No, but we can next, if you want to, if that leads us on nicely.
If you're a novelist, agents are really, really useful. They're not quite so useful if you're a playwright, but they might be. I don't have an agent. Okay.
But in terms of, if anybody's watching who doesn't know, an agent's role is to act on your behalf to big publishers or wherever you're trying to be published. What would your advice be about going about finding an agent?
Google. Google is pretty useless on information like what's a dramaturg, or what's the scene in a play, or how do I write a play. But there are lists and lists of agents in there, and in particular the type of work they're interested in. You know, you have to find an agent that has an interest in your area of work. That you've got to do your homework on it, and again, write a good letter that connects to them and their work. There is no point really in having a standard letter and sending it around 50 agents. That's my understanding of it anyway. And if you're a novelist or something, you can always go to the publisher, but an agent will help you, will get you further through if you're a novelist, I think. And then there's the whole area of doing your own work, whether you're a publisher or whether you're a playwright. I do think that as playwrights, we can get our own work on. We can make our own companies. We can get together with people. We can apply for some money from the Arts Council. It's hard work because you end up being producer as well as writer.
Yeah.
But it is a way of getting your work on. It really, really is. And there are theatres in Liverpool that have opportunities for some of us to put our own work on.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic experience as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
The skills, you know, become producer, designer, marketing.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, copy, everything.
Yes.
Brilliant. So I've got one more question from the audience, and then I've just got one more before we finish.
Can I give you an example there? Sarah Mcdonald Hughes, who lives in Manchester, who writes for The Archers and Doctors and lots of TV stuff. She came to Action Transport and she wrote her first play with us, and then she set up her own company called Monkeywood Theatre Company, applied to the Arts Council, established the company, and then used that company as a base, as a CV maker for her to be a writer in television and radio.
Oh, incredible.
You know.
Brilliant. And that's absolutely something anybody who's watching today could do.
It's taken her 15 years.
Okay.
And
more realistic.
That's it. That's what it takes. It takes 15 years of hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give to a budding facilitator who'd like to dip their toe into the world of teaching playwriting?
You need someone to, well, you either need someone to employ you, like a theatre company that's going to be running sessions with young people or sessions with adults, or you can try and set it up yourself, can't you? Because this Zoom thing and this Facebook thing, they're here to democratize the whole arts industry. There are lots of people that I hear about that are running courses in lots of things, and I don't know who they are, and I don't know what their pedigree is. I presume some of them are fantastic, but some of them I think might not be, and I'm willing to bet the people in this room are possibly somewhere in the middle. But it's set up a business, have a business plan, have a strategy, make connections, make connections with people that will pay you to run these courses for them. That's the best way, isn't it? So go and meet on Zoom or in real life all those theatre companies in your region that do that sort of work.
Brilliant. We've just had one more question from the audience sneak in the last minute, so are we okay to answer that one first? What's been your most frustrating experience as a writer, wanting to get something performed? How do you keep yourself motivated in the face of setbacks?
Ask me the first part again, sorry.
What's been your most frustrating experience as a writer wanting to get something performed, and how to keep yourself motivated?
I am very lucky because I don't just write plays and try and get them performed. I don't do that. I only write to commission, if you like. So I'm very fortunate in that respect. And but setbacks, it's when people don't want to do your play the way you want it done. That's tricky, isn't it? Or they set up the process and they don't talk to you. That's happened to me sometimes. A play has been commissioned and then they bring in a freelance director, and to be honest, the director doesn't really like the play. and he is too much of a coward to have a conversation with the writer. So he doesn't ask me to go to rehearsals. That's happened twice over many, many years. And you think, okay, there's a problem with the play. Let's sort it out. Because there's a problem with every play. Every play is a problem play.
So when that happens, you face it head on and then jump into another project?
You just have to get sad and get angry.
Yeah.
You know, I don't do drink and drugs, but I just have to get angry and stomp around and go for a run and try and go on to the next project. But I still remember those projects where the process has gone so badly. That's why I'm at the beginning, I talked about process. I'm really interested in getting the process right so that I talk to the people that are putting the play on.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication is one of those key elements, isn't it, of all the skills that you have to bring to the table as a playwright and as a
yeah. But I do apply for things, and people do say no all the time, and I won't swear here, but I just swear a lot. I swear a lot, and I think, how can you not give me that job when I know I'm completely qualified to do it? How can you not? How could you not do that? We all feel that, don't we?
Absolutely. And you have to let that drive you to the next opportunity.
That's right. We write a short story and it's just fantastic, and nobody wants to publish it. Oh my God. That's because our identity becomes our writer. Being a writer is our identity. So if people don't buy our writing, it's our whole being that gets smashed. That's the price we pay.
Absolutely. I'm still confused why I haven't won the National Poetry Competition. I've been in 10 years now, Kevin. Not heard anything back.
Maybe they all got lost in the post.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe they start reading by the time they get to my submission, which is always last minute. So yeah.
But I think it is important to know how to deal with a disappointment. And again, that's not about writing. That's about writing. That's about who you are as a human being.
Yeah.
We have to know how to deal with disappointment in relationships and in writing and in other job applications. Yeah. That's part of our self-education, isn't it?
Yeah.
If that's your big problem, that's the one to sort out. You need to talk to people about it. You need to read some books about it, or change, do something else, do something which is less painful.
Or build it into your strategy, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I've got one more question, which is, often the case is that by making mistakes and going down the wrong path, we actually learn more. But what advice would you give to someone that you wish you'd known when you first started writing, first started pursuing this practice?
I wish I knew how to write at the beginning, because I didn't. But I suppose and I was lucky that I worked with people that were supportive and helpful and gave me another chance. I work with Travelling Light Theatre Company, who have been, I don't know what they're like now. They were a fantastic young people's company. And actually, I wasn't very good as either a writer or director. But a woman called Jude Merrill gave me the opportunity to try and play and learn. Mm. And we do need to be with people that allow us to learn. If you can find a place where you can get things wrong.
And I guess part of it is allowing yourself to learn. And as frustrating as it can be, you will get better every time you write, every time you share, every time you take the opportunity. So, absolutely. Well, we're actually out of time. It's 2 minutes past 8 already. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a really interesting conversation and hopefully has demystified some of the aspects of earning a living as an artist.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I love now to ask all the people that are here their stories, because as writers we all have stories about how we cope with this thing that we do. It's not straightforward. At times it is exhilarating and exciting, and other times it is just rather disappointing.
But you've got to get that strategy and you've got to keep going. And one of the ways of doing that is connecting. So there's going to be lots. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of the opportunities to meet Kevin and some of our workshops coming up next week. And maybe they can come along and tell you some of those aspects of their strategy and their practice. But for now, thank you so much, Kevin.
It's a pleasure. It's lovely to meet you.
Bye. Well, what a fantastic conversation and event. If you have a business idea or a new business that's less than 3 years old and you would like 12 hours of free business support and advice, please get in touch with me. You can email me on amy@writingonthewall.org.uk, and you can also find out more on our website at www.writingonthewall.org.uk, and we'll put that in the comments for you as well. As I said before, we have a whole nother week of wonderful events with Kevin Dyer. Find out more on our website at writingonthewall.org.uk, where you can book your free tickets. And I want to say thank you to our funders. This has been made possible with support from the National Lottery Reaching Communities Fund, Liverpool City Region COVID-19 Emergency Funding, and the Steve Morgan Foundation. Our funders, wonderful funders at the Enterprise Hub, are the European Regional Development Fund. And thank you very much for joining us tonight, all our audience members. Please take 3 minutes to fill in one of our monitoring forms. A link will appear in your comments there. And a special thank you to everybody who has donated for this event. Our events are free, but we do accept donations to Writing on the Wall. If you would like to make a donation, we've also got a link in the comments for that as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.